I bet you'll be surprised to find out how exactly in this case your daily life is connected to national security and advanced scientific convergence. Let's start off with some context. First reported in 2016 among U.S. Embassy personnel in Havana, Cuba, the Havana syndrome has since affected various U.S. officials worldwide. A number of theories have been put forward to explain these mysterious symptoms. The most probable cause was acoustic or ultrasonic devices used for a specific purpose or intent, surveillance, communication disruption, or direct human factor effect. This prominent hypothesis involves directed energy weapons, like microwave or acoustic devices, used for surveillance or direct harm.
Hey, look who's here! I'm honored and simultaneously incredibly surprised that you made it this far into the video. My name is Lily, and I'll be the one to provide you with the rest of the information. And for the context, I will just cover up the basics from the initial Havana syndrome investigation. During the investigation, the electromagnetic exposure to radar was considered as one of possible scenarios, and that is understandable because close-range exposure to radar pulses can have a disruptive effect on human physiology, such as interfering and affecting the functional capability of physiological systems, such as, for example, the neurological system that is mostly being targeted. So, such radar systems would have been too energy consuming and required too much space to be installed, and the investigators suggested that known radar systems, at least those at the time, keep in mind that those Havana syndrome cases started being reported since 2016, would not be quite efficient in action for such a precise execution on human targets. Therefore, there must be different, more sophisticated, or at very least portable and compact systems bearing the same capabilities. Two categories of such technologies, by the way, have been defined as ultrasonic and microwave. The first one, ultrasonic devices create imbalances in the inner ear that can cause confusion or vertigo by producing the cavitation effect, where the small bubbles in the fluid of the inner ear would disrupt its function within. With that being said, we're just taking the fluid of the inner ear as an example because the cavitation effect can be produced in the various types of the biological fluids. Here, from the inner ear, with the blood supply, they can be transported, meaning those small bubbles can be transported to the brain, where this interruption can simulate the analogy of the decompression sickness. Depending on the intensity and the objectives, it may cause long or short-term structural and functional alterations. Microwave energy devices, on the other hand, are dangerous to the electrochemical integrity of the human brain itself. And that is because the brain operates through electrical and chemical signaling within the neural networks, where the neurons communicate via spikes of electrical activity, otherwise called action potentials, which defines the electrical integrity. And in the meantime, neurotransmitters are released at synapses to help propagate or inhibit those signals, which is called chemical signaling. Here's where the habit and learning comes into play, and that means that neurons that fire together, wire together, and eventually those groups of neurons, they form functional circuits that govern thoughts, emotions, movements, and bodily functions. Disrupting such electrochemical integrity or otherwise artificially modulating neural activity can lead to significant changes in perception, cognition, and behavior. So here, most importantly, the rapid development of artificial intelligence enabled an unprecedented convergence of life and physical sciences, medicine, and engineering that make possible the creation of neurotechnology capable of reading from and writing into the human brain in real time, as per the American neuroscientist and neuroethicist Dr. James Giordano. who, by the way, has been involved in the investigation of the Havana syndrome cases himself. So the victims reported numerous physical symptoms caused by this apparently classified technology, or the technology that just has not been revealed yet. Those physical symptoms were headaches, nausea, vertigo, ringing in the ears, pains in the body, fainting, and actually many more. But by the end of the day, it's not just the physical symptoms that define the neurotechnological targeting, and we will talk about that. Let's talk about the psychological symptoms, because they conclude a considerable part of the neurotechnological targeting. So, talking about the electromagnetic torture, this thing intentionally inflicts severe mental suffering through the manipulation on the cognitive level and causing psychological distress. The severity of its impact on the psyche depends on the frequency of exposure and the intensity of the electromagnetic attacks. Very similar to the physical symptoms. It is known because there are thousands of victims who can confirm the same, both across the United States and globally. The problem is their suffering, unfortunately, is not acknowledged, often labeled as a conspiracy just because they are not the federal employees. Many trustworthy sources, like the UN, for example, admit that there have been thousands of reports from civilians, but unfortunately, in the case of the United States, for example, with the exception of just a few lawsuits, the efforts to take legal action do not go any further, for the most part because of the covert nature of the attacks, and additionally because of the lack of the legislation criminalizing non-consensual neurotechnological interference. Unfortunately, there are concerns about the violations of the civil rights and fundamental freedoms, and that's because physical and emotional torture is a focal aspect of nearly every case, no matter even if the target is actually aware of it or not. Many believe that they are being targeted for their individual reasons, but frankly, I do believe that this is a matter of manipulating the masses. Think about it. You create various social groups that either agree or disagree with each other, but ultimately both sides are being controlled by the joint authority connected by single agenda, widely spread across different domains, vertically and horizontally. In other words, yes, honestly, I do believe that the deep state is real, but who exactly is involved is unclear. With that said, you don't need to rely on outside sources to gain more insights, because besides of numerous articles, interviews, broadcasts online, you may even find the victims within your circle. And this statement is not exaggerated. I have spoken to many victims of electromagnetic exposure, being actually one of them myself. So in order to identify the neurotechnological targeting, we first of all need to know what it means. So how do we define the neurotechnological targeting? Neurotechnological targeting is a manipulative tactic specifically tailored to exploit an individual's psychological vulnerabilities with active remote neural interference. It provokes continuous destabilization of an individual's mental and emotional state, dismantling one's regular set of life, often resulting in severe psychological or physical harm and social isolation. This form of torture requires advanced technological capabilities to turn weaknesses or sensitive aspects of one's character against themselves. It often utilizes intimate details from one's private life or medical record to achieve a profoundly destructive impact on mental and emotional health. Big data plays a crucial role in this process, by the way, because deep learning algorithms are being refined through the complex and variable brain activities of the targets. often achieved by isolating them temporarily or permanently to create a controlled environment. Prolonged exposure to such interference destabilizes both the conscious and subconscious mind, leading the victim into a state of mental distress and often depression. The objective here is to make the victim's psyche susceptible to further manipulation. As we already defined the neurotechnological targeting in general, I wanted to move on to the technical part and talk a little bit about the remote neural monitoring that is being, in my opinion, the main tool that is being utilized for the neurotechnological targeting. So, what is it? Remote neural monitoring, or RNM for short, is a process enabled by the neurotechnological devices, electromagnetic systems, or networks where the cognitive processes are remotely tracked, decoded, and interfaced by the external electromagnetic systems without the physical intervention or the actual implants in the brain. In order to be able to manipulate someone's thoughts, you simply just got to access and interpret their thought processes and merely just know what they think in the first place. RNM as a phenomenon exists independently from everything else, but here it is rather a part of a bigger picture. Once at least some of the brain waves are captured by the external system, here's where the actual magic starts. The advanced neurotech can manipulate the thought content by inserting and extracting thoughts. And here's how. An individual's submission to neurotechnological control is achieved through a combination of manipulation on the neurological level, as mentioned previously, and psychological conditioning. I will not talk about the psychological conditioning much because you can look it up separately, but it is deeply rooted in human behavior and social practices, and it's naturally for the human brain to function that way. That's why it's so useful for targeting practices. But regarding the manipulation on the neurological level, there are many tactics that are being used, and here are some of them. Fake cognitive impairments. They can be achieved by disrupting that same electrochemical integrity in the brain that we spoke about in the beginning of this video. The next one is causing fake symptoms of mental health disorders, meaning such symptoms as hearing voices, for example, or developing the cycles of intrusive thoughts can in fact be artificially induced. Third one in my list is the emotional destabilization. It is being achieved by forcing an anxiety in person and is being very common in the neurotechnological targeting. And last but not least here is the induced physical symptoms, such as those reported in the Havana syndrome cases. All of these gradually weaken target's cognitive resilience over time, no matter if it requires a long period of time or it would take shorter period of time. Eventually, it disrupts the target's ability to differentiate between self-generated thoughts and externally induced ones. Once individual reaches the state of cognitive and emotional vulnerability, the specialized interrogation techniques which exploit confusion, fear, and stress reinforce a controlled mental state. These techniques disorient the target, leading them to doubt their own perceptions and accept externally provided narratives as their own. The manipulation is compounded by subliminal messaging, which continuously conditions the target's subconscious to align with imposed directives. Now, it's important to understand what is subliminal messaging and what its role in narrative control. Subliminal messaging here refers to the delivery of information below the threshold of conscious awareness. What it means? It means that the brain registers and processes the input without the individual being fully aware of it. So let it sink in. And here's the question: does it mean that your thought, decision, or behavior could be altered in a critical moment when it's vital for you to make the right thing? Yes, it does mean exactly that thing. Based on their observations, by continuously subjecting the individual to the subliminal cues, the external system can achieve two main objectives through auditory, visual, or cognitive subliminals. First objective being the surrogate personality implantation, which is absolutely severe and detrimental for the human identity. The target's original beliefs, behaviors, and responses are overridden with programmed thought patterns. This method can enforce a new identity designed to align with external control according to the planned course of action. The second objective is somehow similar to the first one, but does not necessarily go in that severe form. It is a narrative control where the target's perception of reality is shaped by systematically presented selective information, reinforcing specific ideologies and suppressing critical thought. This practice ensures that any dissenting or unwanted views or attempts to resist are met with automatic cognitive rejection. This way, the individual may still have the sense of personal identity or the feeling of their authentic self, but let's be honest, is it really who they are, or is it the character that has been actually imposed on them by the external system? And that's, my friends, if anyone will ever watch this video, is the chilling reality of today's emerging technologies, which operate on the foundation built and set forth with the help of our good old well-known technologies like Wi-Fi, internet, and various telecommunications. When such technologies get into the wrong hands, which is ultimately already happening, the confidential information can be compromised and security environments can be revealed, and unfortunately the trustworthy individuals become discredited and cannot be trusted anymore. So let's think about it this way. No one is actually safe from this influence because we all are the human beings and we all operate in the same way. Further, I just wanted to let you know that I'm not a blogger, and even more, I actually forced myself to create this video, even though I frankly enjoyed it, but I just made it with the hope that this information will somehow help anyone to make conscious decisions and to make good judgments using their discernment about the actual world we live in today.